Hello, welcome to episode 209 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. The final horror review for October of 2017. Last year I did so many horror reviews, over 30 I think, over 31 in fact, in the month of October for 2016. 2017, not as many as I would have liked to get to, but I got to quite a few, maybe 10, 15, something like that. Today is the 31st of October, it is Halloween, and the film I picked to close out the horror festivities was Carrie, the 1976 film directed by Brian DePalma, adapted from the Stephen King novel, which I believe was his first officially published novel. I read a book many years ago called Stephen King on Writing, and he recalled the story of when he got the phone call that they were going to buy Carrie from him, and all that kind of stuff, and how it completely changed his life. That story really stuck with me. The way he described how he felt when he got that phone call, it was just the beginning of a new part of his life, and obviously he's one of the most prolific and successful and well-known authors in the world, and therefore, given his very rapid output, he's written so many books. There's always Stephen King adaptations, from television to movies. I mean, this year alone we had The Dark Tower, we had another version of It, there's probably been more as well. And Carrie has been done many times. There was a TV version, I think. There was the recent remake with Chloe Grace Moretz, which I watched and thought was okay. Thought it was a little bit unbelievable that Chloe Grace Moretz could play this character of Carrie, who's supposed to be more of a unconventionally pretty character, I think. And that's what Sissy Spacek brings to the role in this film, in just great visual style, I think, because she really has this unusual beauty to her. She's really pretty, but you can believe that she's someone who would be ostracized in high school because of the way she looks. Of course, the film follows a girl in high school called Carrie White, and we open right up with her in the kind of school girls' shower, and she has her first period, and she doesn't know what a period is. And so she freaks out, and all the other girls who probably kind of passively aggressively bully her in general, they take the opportunity to jump on that and absolutely ridicule her, humiliate her, degrade her, throw tampons at her, you know, shout "plug it up" and all that stuff, and that kind of sets in motion the key element of this story, which is one of the girls feels quite remorseful about what they did, and she asks her boyfriend, who's, you know, very popular and so on, to ask Carrie to go to the prom, to give her something, to try and maybe ingratiate her into a different side of school, to maybe change her life a little bit. Even though it's towards the end of the year, she wants to make that kind of sacrifice for herself. She doesn't want to you know, give up her prom date, of course, but she decides to do that anyway because she wants to help this girl out. She feels bad about what she did and what she was a part of, and so I like that part of the film, that character. I forget the character's name, and again, I just watched the film 20 minutes ago, but the girl who decides to try to rectify what she'd done and what she'd been a part of, and by doing something nice and just saying to her boyfriend, you know, you need to do this for me, take this girl to the prom and give her a good night, basically. Of course, Carrie's very, you know, reticent of this. She thinks, rightfully so, you know, or, you know, she's right to kind of be suspicious that this could be something that's not in her best interest, so that they're trying to trick her again, that it's going to be a big thing to humiliate her again. And I like how that's not the case from some characters. We have another character called Chris, played by Nancy Allen, who I remember most from RoboCop, looking very young in this film, and she hates Carrie and decides to take her revenge on because when they humiliate Carrie in the showers, all the girls get subject to detention and that kind of stuff, so Chris is really pissed off at this. You know, it kind of interferes with her social life, and so she decides she's going to get her own back on Carrie and have her, you know, well, I don't know, I guess if you haven't seen the film I shouldn't spoil it. You all know it though. I mean, it's Carrie, right? Even if you haven't seen the film, you know the ending. But Chris, this bitch, she decides to plot a course to, you know, get her revenge on Carrie. John Travolta plays her boyfriend, and he was not the best in this film. Very kind of like, you know, hey, I told you not to say that to me. Like, just, yeah, not very good at all. And you could argue John Travolta's never been that great of an actor, but he certainly wasn't at his strongest at this point in his career. But it's kind of fun to see him anyway. I like John Travolta. I'm quite a fan of the guy. I enjoy him in films, even if he's not the best actor, you know. I love him in Wild Hogs. Anyway, getting completely off the track with John Travolta stuff, because he's not really a big part of the film. We also have Carrie's mother. I forget the character's name again, but she's played by Piper Laurie, and this is another thing that's completely off base, but Piper Laurie is such an interesting actress to me because I've only seen her in 15-year increments. Like, anything I've seen her in is always a decade and a half between the last thing I saw her in. I've seen her in The Hustler from the early 60s, I've seen her in Twin Peaks from the 90s, and then right here in the middle, 1975, 1976, we have Carrie. So yeah, I've seen Piper Laurie in 3 roles where, you know, again, she ages 15 years each time and she looks quite different each time, but you can still kind of see in the middle where it's just weird. I just like was thinking about how people, you know, get older and how their looks change, but they're still the same. I don't know. I just couldn't stop looking at her and just like, it's strange. And that's just my own personal thing that I brought to it. Yeah, so her character is very fanatical. She is this highly Christian, like fire and brimstone Christian, and she doesn't want Carrie to, you know, be involved with anyone. She's very protective of Carrie and freaks out when Carrie has her first period because she thinks that means that she's had sex for the first time. She's very over the top, this character, almost to the point where it's hard to really buy into it. And in fact, Piper Laurie, who plays the character of Carrie's mother, thought that this was supposed to be a black comedy because it was so over the top, and Brian DePalma had to say to her, look, we're really going for a horror film here. So Piper Laurie did the role, but she later stated that she still saw that role as a black comedy because it was just too ridiculous, too over the top. I think at times it does go there, but a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times it's really effective. One of my problems with the film is that I feel like there should have been more of Carrie and more of Carrie's relationship with her mother. I mean, we get all we need to know, but I think it could have dug a little bit deeper. Maybe add another 10-15 minutes to the film. It's only an hour and 38 minutes. I think it could have really used from a bit more depth in Carrie's life, because I feel like we spend a lot of time on the teenagers, on the other characters, and you know, plotting to, you know, get Carrie to go to the prom, plotting to get revenge on Carrie, and then we have a teacher who is a really good character who really empathizes with Carrie and tries to help her a lot in the film. I really like that character a lot, and the actress who played her. She had a great sense of compassion to her that she got across through her performance. Also, William Katt, who plays Tommy Ross, I remember that character's name, and he's the guy who asks Carrie to go to the prom with him at the request of his girlfriend. I thought he was really good. I've always known William Katt as the guy who was almost Luke Skywalker. They were auditioning Carrie and Star Wars at the same time, and he was one of the guys who read for the part of Luke Skywalker, so I've seen him with that hair that he has in Carrie, the big curly, you know, blonde hair, in the auditions from the Star Wars making of documentaries. So it was weird to see him in an actual film for the first time. I thought he was really good, actually. There's a couple of moments where he's a little bit shaky and not believable, but for the most part, I thought he just felt so believable, actually. You know, again, there's a few cracks there in certain scenes, but for the most part, I really liked how he reacted to all the situations he was put in, because it's a bit weird to be asked to take someone out to your prom by your girlfriend, and I think that he reacted really naturally to it. The way he'd kind of just laugh at how ridiculous some of these things were, but not in an over-the-top kind of way. It felt like he was really just reacting to what was going on, and I really just bought the character, and I thought that he was a real highlight of the film. Sissy Spacek is incredible for the most part. I thought that she was great in the film. There's a lot of stuff her character goes through, and particularly by that final sequence, I mean, she really made that final sequence so memorable, but that also speaks to the way that Brian DePalma laid it out, the way he used split screen, which was kind of a staple of his in the 70s. I first saw that in one of his earlier films, Sisters, which was quite effective. Here it was really good, and that final scene at the prom, it's just spectacular. It kind of takes your breath away. It's just the build-up is almost unbearable, and when everything gets unleashed, it's just a wonder to behold, and it's horrifying. That look on Carrie's face and the, you know, everything that happens through that. Obviously, she has telekinesis, discovers that through the film. I wish we'd seen more of that, more of her just at home, kind of experimenting with things, you know, because we got the sense that she was able to do things with her mind, and then we see her reading books, but we don't really see her testing those powers. We don't really see her doing anything to kind of, you know, set the boundaries for herself or anything like that. I guess that's the point where she just unleashes things, and it's the emotions that brings it out, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more there. Again, I just felt like there was lacking a bit more from Carrie's side. There's a lot of her in the film, but I feel like there could have been more, especially since the film is called Carrie. And again, I thought Sissy Spacek was great. The opening scene, very dreamlike in the girls' showers, almost softcore porn, you know. I can't speak to, you know, now, or certainly back then in the 70s, where the teenage high school girls would run around their, you know, locker room completely naked, laughing. That just seems utterly unrealistic. That seems like a male fantasy to me. And even the scene of Carrie in the shower at the very beginning, when the blood first comes down, and And I thought that was handled well. It could have been more gruesome, but it was, you know, it was just the right amount. You know, it got the idea across, which is just horrifying, just so traumatic. I couldn't even imagine going through an experience like that. But when we focus on Carrie showering, and Sissy Spacek is, you know, soaping herself up and kind of squeezing her breasts together, it's like, I don't buy that. You know, this girl is like literally a shrinking violet. And she's there right in front of all the popular schoolgirls. I don't think she'd be stood there in her own world, just kind of like, you know, lathering herself up sensually. It didn't fit the character to me. I thought she'd be more like kind of almost kind of in on herself and kind of not trying to make sure no one would see, you know, her naked. You know, just, I don't know, that just felt out of character to me, especially as the film goes on and we see how timid she is. So it felt like it was opportunistic, kind of, you know, again, male fantasy, you know, just enacting that kind of stuff. You know, oh, well, we need this shot of the, you know, I don't know, a bit weird. And even that scene, to a point, I think was overplayed a little bit. Even by Sissy Spacek, I thought it was a bit over the top. And just the idea of it alone was enough. And, you know, the girls are like bombarding her with like 50 tampons that they just happen to have on hand. You know, it just, yeah. I have a few problems with the film, for sure. Very minor. Actually, I don't know if I should go into it because it's spoilerific, actually. I'll say that a character dies in the film, and they have a very long shot on them, where they're supposed to be dead, and their eyes are open. And in almost any film, you always see the neck going, or you know the chest going up and down or something. You can always tell that they're breathing, basically. And this actor, it was a long shot, and this actor was completely still. And it wasn't like they were lying down either. They were in this awkward position with their death, and they held it for such a long time. I was really impressed. Because usually you can just see it and you just got to deal with it in a film, but I thought that was really impressive, actually. Okay, I should talk about the direction. Here's another problem I had with the film. Brian DePalma, I love him. I love his films. They're so different, from something like this to The Untouchables. You know, he's made so many different types of films. Sisters. I just love the variety of his career and the stuff that he's done. But there's no denying that Brian DePalma is a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan. I think the school is called the Bates High School or something like that. And he uses the Psycho riff, well, not riff, the violin kind of 4 notes, you know, ring, 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 ring. He uses that throughout this film as this this signature kind of icon for Carrie's powers. You know, when something bad is about to happen and she looks at something and it moves, ring, ring. And it's the Psycho thing. I mean, this is only 15, 16 years after Psycho came out, and it felt so on the nose. And this is a guy who definitely emulates Hitchcock in some of his films in the way that he builds tension and the way that he shoots things. Different camera angles, you know, coming up from the top, slanted stuff. You know, just the way he approaches making films, that there is no doubt that Hitchcock has really had a big influence on Brian De Palma's filmmaking, at least in those early parts of his career. And it really is evident here. But it's not as good as Hitchcock. And then he uses the Psycho kind of, and it's like, yeah, not that big of a fan of that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think you could have done without the Psycho thing. It would be like someone using the Jaws kind of and expecting it to kind of play without being some kind of parody-esque comedy relief. But you know, overall, there's some incredibly memorable stuff in this film, and most of it is down to Sissy Spacek's performance. You know, the way that she goes from that kind of timid girl to someone who starts to just come out of her shell at the prom. And it's really sweet, and it's heartbreaking to see to me, it's more heartbreaking when she feels like she's almost about to become accepted by, you know, her peers in high school. That's more heartbreaking to me than the stuff that happens to her at the end when, you know, the kids are cruel. It's just the knowing what's coming. You know, it's horrible. And in that sense, I feel like it's a film that wouldn't maybe hold up on too many rewatches, but overall, I did love it. There's quite a few problems with it for me, but they're not enough to really weigh the film down, and there's so much in there that is memorable. And yeah, maybe her mother's a bit over the top and fanatical as this, you know, overly religious woman, but I feel like it works within the framework of the story, where you are dealing with telekinesis anyway. So there is that element of the unreal to it, and so it fits in with the world that the story is set in, I think. Yeah, so there we go. My thoughts on Carrie. Is it a film you should see before you die? I think it is. I don't think it's a great film. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any stretch, but I think it's a really, really good film with lots of little great moments. You know, there are bits that drag it down for me, but there are bits that really bring it back up, and those moments that bring it back up are overall quite worth it. So there we go. Thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts down below on this film, what you think of it. If you've seen any of the other Carrie films, how they compare to this one, how this compares to the book, if anyone's read it, I would love to know, because there are certainly things in the film I thought, and I'd like to know if they were specifically in the book. Oh, and there's a lot of really good shots of, not deep focus, but it's this kind of effect where you have something really close in frame, in focus, and then something really far back, also in focus. And there's usually like a kind of blurry line in the middle of the camera. It's a certain effect, I forget what it's called, but it's really cool. And Brian DePalma maybe overused it a little bit, but he used it in some really good scenes, especially in the classroom, when we have Tommy Ross right here, and Carrie right in the back. You know, so you have this guy who is this front and center kind of popular kid in school, Carrie right at the back, literally back of the class, you know, really shies away from any sort of attention. You have them both in the same frame together, in focus, and that's a scene where they kind of have a sort of an interaction that goes on to play into their relationship throughout the rest of the film. So I liked it when he used that kind of technique with the camera. It was really cool. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. And moving on, for the next month, we'll be talking about Asian films as part of Asian Cinema Season, which I'm doing over my whole channel, all the videos, but also in the Epic Film Challenge too. So you can expect a lot of Asian movies coming up in the Epic Film Challenge too for the foreseeable future. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you in those videos. And that's about it.